welcome to another watch list, my weekly rundown of what I've been watching, what I've been up to, and what kind of interesting cinema or releases I've been currently watching. And the first one up today, well, there is a recent Criterion release of it in the US, and there's rumours that it might be coming out in the UK soon, which will make me all the more excited because it is, well, The Parallax View, a 1970s political thriller starring Warren Beatty, amongst others. And it follows in the run of political thrillers that came out around that time, All the President's Men, Clute, that kind of thing. And it tells the story of Warren Beatty, who's a reporter who is investigating a shooting of a political candidate where he is sort of in the place. So he's there at the time, although he wasn't allowed in the room. And subsequently, a couple of years later, a lot of the people who were there at the time start being killed off in somewhat mysterious circumstances, although only the people who were there at the time seem to be paying mind to that. So it's not being picked up by the wider press. So things like, you know, they all seem to be dying of natural deaths, and he goes to investigate this. And there's the general premise for the film. It goes in to investigate whether they were being killed, his resistance from his own current newspaper as to whether there's any validity to what he's investigating, and then into his own relationship with how far he's prepared to go to get the truth. Typical 1970s fare, but typically very, very watchable. Now, I really enjoyed this. I'd seen a couple of reviews of The Parallax View given the new release, i.e. Solitary Ronin's video, that goes into some depth in this, way more depth than I will. Again, link in the description. But The Parallax View is a film that, if I was to rank it alongside All the President's Men, etc., is right up there with as good as that one is. And certainly one that you should check out. Now, obviously I didn't get to see any extras, etc., that were involved in this, which is why I'm really hoping for a forthcoming UK Criterion release, because I don't really want to have to pay what are exorbitant import duties at the moment. It's quite difficult to import stuff in the UK. But definitely something that, yeah, I would really like to check out more about, get into more depth into, and really get into the nuts and bolts of what that film was about, because you have some great performances all the way across the crew, including Warren Beatty, who sometimes gets pigeonholed as a bit of a pretty boy, but has been involved in some pretty big cinema releases and films that are well thought of over the year, including The Parallax View, as I've been talking about. Next up is a film from, well, this release is from Artificial Eye, and it's from Paweł Pawlikowski, and it is not his follow-up film, although I do have it up there. It is Ida, and Ida tells the story of this young lady who is a nun-to-be, and Ida, as she's getting ready for her vows to be taken as a nun, is told of her real true past, and that is that she was a Jew, and her mother and father were Jews around the time of the Second World War. And she goes to investigate her heritage with her aunt, who is her only living relative left. And she goes to investigate the heritage, all the while doing this voyage of discovery for herself about who she is as a person, because it makes her question who she was or who she thought she was. And as she investigates more about her parents and about her own heritage and her background, and also who her aunt was, her life becomes turned upside down a little bit as she kind of pushes at the boundaries of both her faith, of her life, and the choices that have been made up to her at the point. It is not a film that goes off in lots of different directions, but it is an incredibly beautifully shot monochrome film. Every frame is a picture. You could stop it, freeze frame it. I'm going to throw some of the images up here for you. You'll see just how beautiful this film is. It's not an action-packed or drama-filled story, but there's lots of interest that happens through it, and it is a thoughtful tale of a person that is questioning themselves and what they believe, both about themselves and who they thought they were, and then ultimately goes to say about the resolution of how that manifests itself in their future going forward. It's a really, really gorgeous movie. It's a really, really interesting movie, and one that I really got a lot out of. Even if at the face of it, other people might consider it some like slow, or maybe not enough happens, but I think there's plenty in here to hold your attention. A really wonderful release. Next up, well, let's go from that period of time. It's a recently modern movie about a period, somewhere caught in the middle, to 1920s. And we'll go to the Eureka release of The Last Warning, which came out recently, which is another Paul Lenny production. And it's a silent movie that tells the story of an incident in a theatre where a performer is killed on stage while performing, and the theatre is subsequently shut down. The body was missing of the performer when they're dead, and it's a mystery and what builds up a bit of a ghost story around the whole thing. Now, some years later, a man comes along and wants to put the original cast together, obviously without the original protagonist, but kind of put it on and put the show on as well as it can. But mysterious things start happening around then as well, as the somewhat supernatural element of the story comes back, and it plays out the way through. You find out the solution to the mystery. Now, I would say plot-wise, etc., the film is a bit all over the place. I think it kind of loses itself in the middle. But we have a bit of a caperish 1920s movie that I think is full of interesting scenes and full of interesting ideas, and a wonderful print. Now, I will say the print in this, or the restoration that they've done in this film, I often say it's a miracle that we get releases like this at all. But this one, there are parts of it that are very clearly still damaged, but the vast majority of the film looks beautiful. I mean, it's an incredible restoration. Like I keep on saying, these releases when they come out just blow my mind with they're as good quality as they are. Now, obviously, the Eureka release comes in this beautiful slipcover with our alternative artwork inside, and Eureka, lo and behold, are now in Skinovo cases. No thing at the top, which is a bit weird, takes a bit of getting used to. But, you know, you get your booklet and your disc inside. You have a new score that goes along with it. You have a video essay that accompanies the piece. And, you know, I wish there was more of these Paul Lenny things, because obviously this is the third one they've released in a short space of time. And I've really enjoyed Waxworks, and I've really enjoyed The Man Who Laughs, and I've really enjoyed, obviously, The Last Warning so far, even if script-wise, it doesn't totally hold up. That if you're a fan of that kind of era, you'll enjoy this just as much as the rest of them, I think. Next up, we're back in the realms of the Sunday night cinema, the Sunday night film. I'd watched the Jean-Claude Van Damme film last week, and this week I grabbed another one. Well, I had to wait for this one to come in the post, because this was Nowhere to Run, Van Damme, from 1993. And this one tells the story of a man who's broken out of that prison bus, and he finds himself a bit lost in the woods, and he finds himself adjacent to this farm, and he finds himself embroiled in a bit of a land battle. The land battle is over the fact that there's some land where a developer wants to redevelop an entire area, but in classic both film and in drama style, there are a couple of people who will not sell their land, including a young lady who lives alone with her two kids, one played by Kieran Culkin, and she's not going to sell her house. She does not want to sell her land. This land is filled with memories for her. It also is self-sustaining land with cattle, etc. on it. And, well, predictably so, Van Damme gets involved in protecting the family. It probably doesn't take a genius to tell you where the plot of this cinema goes. There's a bad guy who's a henchman for the developer, who sets about to try and ruffle a few feathers. There's a local sheriff who's been bought off, who's already in a relationship with the young lady. But of course, Van Damme being Van Damme, he's got an aura about him, and people like him, and including the kids. You get a pretty trashy piece of cinema, and one that my wife said, oh my god, it was crap, and I went, but it was good crap, wasn't it? I thoroughly enjoyed Nowhere to Run, and again, if I do this a couple of times, you might see a lovely glisten of these beautiful, you know, gold-plated nearly, well, not gold-plated obviously, but these shiny laminated covers that are in here. In addition, there's an interview with one of the cast members that put it together. And again, another Van Damme film that I really enjoyed. Long live and long may continue these Van Damme films. And I know a lot of people seem to like Nowhere to Run, but I've got something out of every single one that I've watched, and I need to keep them coming. Good fun. And I look forward to keeping up this run of weekend, kind of not so serious cinema, because some of the other stuff I tend to watch is maybe a bit more serious. But my next film isn't serious at all, because it's another one I watched on streaming, and one that I'd heard a lot about, and that is Colour Out of Space, starring Nicolas Cage from a few years ago, which is a Lovecraftian tale, although I wasn't aware that it was actually a Lovecraftian tale. I just thought it was inspired by those events, of a family who live out in the country, and where again there seems to be weird alien stuff happening on their property. Now, I really don't know where to go with Colour Out of Space, because the more that I watched of the movie, the more it was not what I expected it to be. It seemed to be mystical, it seemed to be very spiritual, but it goes places. And by the time I got to the end of that movie, there was just a voice in my head screaming, what the is this? Some of the stuff that happens in that absolutely blew my mind. I can't say I enjoyed the end of the movie at all. It is a bit David Cronenberg body horror-ish, there's no doubt, but I don't even think it's that. It's just like, what the hell? I'm not adverse to a bit of interest in weird cinema, but this just went places that I just don't think I was ready for. The neon colours, filmmaking, etc. is very in your face and very garish and bright, and I did enjoy a lot of that stuff visually, but I don't know if I could go back and watch this anytime soon. It was a hard watch for a lot of times. Again, I don't even know if I disliked it. I don't even know if I liked it. It was just mental. And I hear a lot of people really like it. So, you know, maybe it's just me. And my last film this weekend is a second run release. And I haven't talked about a second run release in a few weeks or so. But this is, and I'm going to murder this. It's a film by Apichatpong Weerasethakul. Nailed it, didn't I? You gotta go for these things. And it's Mysterious Object at Noon. Again, a bit of a hallowed tale. Again, that I didn't know an awful lot about. But when I finished watching the first 10-15 minutes of it, I thought, this is very much a tale that's a slice of life documentary, a bit like Sans Soleil that I talked about from Chris Marker a few weeks ago. It seemed to be of a very similar theme. And I settled down thinking to myself, God, this is really interesting. I didn't really know what to think of Sans Soleil, but now that I've seen another one like that, I think I'm really warming to this kind of film, this kind of slice of life, drop in and out of people's lives and seeing how they react around cameras. It's very naturally shot. And this one's shot around Thailand, and it's in a monochrome shoot again. But then the film again starts taking some turns. And it becomes quite clear that what you have is a version of emergent storytelling. It's a bit like when you see those animations or things where they ask school kids to tell a story, and then somebody animates it or makes it. That's pretty much what happens here, as the characters keep on enveloping or developing the story a bit more, and the filmmaker goes and shoots it to mixed results. I think I can see why a lot of people really like that, because obviously if you're getting told by people what they think the next part of the story is and then you get shown, there's a constantly evolving interest in watching that. And typical of second run, let's be honest, because like, who else is releasing this movie or for you to watch that? So again, super interesting. I don't know if I really loved it at the end, because I think it does run out of steam at various parts throughout the film. And certainly by the time you get to the end, you're far more interested in the people and how the people are telling the story than you actually are about seeing the thing play out. And the filmmaker's obviously very aware of that, because sometimes he decides not to show what happens and what does. And from its start, where it basically starts with a woman telling a story about how she was sold into slavery by her own father, which I just, in the first 5 minutes of a film, it crushed me. To where it ended up, it just seemed like a massive disconnect in some ways, but like super interesting. Some great extras on here as well. I mean, there's an interview between the filmmaker and the head of Second Run as well, the label in there. And we also have a featurette on the restoration of the film, which goes into basically how poor the quality of the print was going back. The interview with the filmmaker is especially interesting because it tells about his evolution as far as cinema, coming from the background that he did to where he went to study, and how he ended up in a Chicago film school that he didn't know was for a film school for experimental cinema, obviously until he got there, but it obviously greatly influenced what he was able to put on the screen here. And if I was to highlight one thing with second run releases all the time, the one thing that separates them apart from everything else, their booklets are astonishingly good. I have never read one of the booklets and not come away completely wowed by what was inside it. This one contains an extensive piece of writing by Tony Raines, who was very responsible actually for bringing this film forward for distribution for an awful lot of places. It tells the story of how the filmmaker waited for him outside and handed it to him to watch and take away with him on an early cut on a VHS tape. And Tony Raines tells that story as does the filmmaker in the interview. It's really fascinating. And certainly, without both the essay and the conversation with the filmmaker, I don't think I'd have enjoyed this release anywhere near as much as just watching the film by itself. If I watched the film by itself, I think I would have come away from it going, I don't know if that's worth your time watching. But when you put all these things together and you put the extras together with the disc, with the booklet, you come away with a deeper appreciation for cinema and for what filmmakers were attempting to do and what they achieved. And as usual with second run, while I may not be in a hurry to go back and watch this again, I've come away from my time with it thinking that is something that I won't have seen before. This one, it was obvious what the filmmaker was trying to do. Even if we end up with this coda at the end, it seems to be unrelated to what comes before it. But yeah, interesting film as you'd always expect from second run. And that's my watch list for this week. Thanks very much for watching as usual. Catch us next time. Let me know what you've been watching or if you've seen any of these films down in the comments, and we're going to have a good old chat and natter about it. Okay? I'll speak to you all again soon, and take care and all the best. Bye.